Welcome to the Flynn Brothers podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Jimmy. Coming up, the best movie year of the century, part 3.5. But first, here's the Solons.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, continuing from part 3, we're diving into our movie years from the 2010s. Okay, 2016, the acclaimed films from the year. Moonlight won Best Picture. I say one of the century's best movies. I think the real awesome thing about this movie is it is about a black, gay boy from the East Coast, and I am a straight white boy from the West Coast, and yet I feel this movie so intensely. It's so different from who I am as a person, but it's just so beautifully made. It's incredibly sad. It's incredibly moving. It is flawless in its cinematography and music choices and writing choices. And yeah, I really think I would put it up against any movie from the 21st century.
Really captures what's magical about filmmaking, just its ability to show you what a different person's life is like, and really get you to feel it, as well as incredible that it's able to do 3 different time periods, 3 different actors, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And it's seamless. Like, I can't think of another movie that pulls this off as well as it does. And then, of course, also Mahershala Ali, just
Unbelievable performance. Yeah, unbelievable. La La Land, another acclaimed film from the year, which they said won Best Picture, but then turned out didn't. A fine movie. I didn't love it. But,
a love letter to Los Angeles.
Gosling, Emma Stone, nice on-screen chemistry. Arrival, a film, again, I was a little lukewarm on, but you really enjoyed. Talk to me about Arrival.
I think what's so interesting about Arrival is it does its best, as Villeneuve tries to do. He did it, I think, also with Sicario, where it's like, let me do this as realistic as possible. And Sicario really does feel realistic, even though there are some fairly dramatized sequences, particularly at the end. But Arrival really feels like what it would be like if aliens were to land on Earth.
Yeah, that's true.
The Amy Adams they bring in a linguist. Like, that's such an interesting wrinkle to it. It's like, this is the person who's going to be able to talk to these guys. It's just the realization of like this. They do this sort of squid ink calligraphy stuff that's super cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, fascinating stuff.
I guess, maybe his films, Denis Villeneuve, God, I got to figure out how to pronounce his name, but they Villeneuve, our producer's telling us I don't think I actually got it, but I tried. But sorry, France. But yeah, his films leave me a little cold sometimes. I really admire them for the craft, but I don't know that I always get emotionally swept up in them. Another acclaimed film, Fences. Denzel, Viola Davis, really titanic performances doing the work of August Wilson. Viola finally gets her Oscar, and really, really sensational work from both of them.
One of the most open and shut, as soon as you saw it, performances, you're like, Oscar, Oscar. Denzel, man, he's so good in it. Just the character that he plays, the washed up baseball player, bitter about the lack of integration in the major leagues. That is just such a rich character, I think, to play. I mean, just so unjust, the life he had to deal with. And then as well with Viola, I remember the moment where I was like, she's winning it. And this is to all the actors out there, if you really want to steal a scene when you're crying, get messy. Yeah. She gets really snotty and messy, and it sells the emotion of it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Other acclaimed films, Hidden Figures, Mel Gibson's Hacksaw Ridge. There was Kenneth Lonergan's Manchester by the Sea, a film all about grief and about as sad as you'd imagine a film all about grief to be. There's a very famous flashback in the film that is I can't even bring myself to describe because it's so unbelievably tragic, but a very, very good, very, very well acted film. Perhaps one of my favorite movies of the year, and perhaps my favorite documentary of all time, came out in 2016. O.J. Made in America from Ezra Edelman it is not only a brilliant sports documentary, not only a brilliant celebrity documentary, it's a capital A American movie, which we've talked about before. And I rewatched it recently, and after OJ had died, I felt it was fitting to revisit it, and it just is incredible. I mean, what do you remember from the film?
Yeah, just it really helped contextualize the racial dynamics of the moment, and how soon after it comes after the Rodney King riots, and just how all of that played into the defense of OJ and the feeling of the country at the time, as well as, I mean, I am born on June 16th, 1994. OJ famously was in the white Bronco on June 17th, 1994.
Christ.
So it was this thing that I had a vague knowledge of, but I really just felt it put you in that world. You understood why OJ was such a big deal.
Right,
and also, like, you know, he's a murderer, obviously, and now seeing him do these like Instagram lives and stuff like that he does, and you're just like, let's just sense it.
Well, he's passed away. He doesn't do them anymore.
Jeez, that's right.
Weren't you listening? Don't you listen to me? I talked about I saw it after he died.
You saw it after he died. I guess I'm just only over. I'm just. Over
I thought we were
thinking
doing this. We'd say things. The other guy would listen. What's going on?
I just
What
sort
are we
of
doing?
wait until you finish talking to start talking.
I got you.
Anyway, when he was alive and he did those things, they just would send a chill up your spine. But when you see him doing like the Hertz ads or like talking on the you know, just talking, you're just like, man, this guy does have it. He has
A lot of
the
charisma.
it factor.
Yeah, 100%.
Not that I probably should be even saying that about him.
No, probably not. But I think it's a very measured thing to say. I mean, you mentioned he was a murderer, obviously, so I think you got both sides there.
Okay.
The scales of justice are balanced. All right, popular films from 2016, Zootopia. Really, really fun movie. I really remember really enjoying that. Moana as well. Another great animated film.
Yep. The Rock, I think one of his best performances, gives a really game singing choice.
Yeah, that's right.
A funny thing that I learned was that originally they had the character bald like The Rock. I saw a mock-up of it, looked incredibly strange, and then some Polynesian peoples were like, actually Maui derives great power from his full, lush head of hair.
And The Rock's like, you're having me play a character with a full head of hair? All right, fine, I'll do it.
It does also make you wonder how much more powerful The Rock would be with a full head of hair.
God, I shudder to imagine.
Yeah.
Another popular animated film, Sausage Party, not quite as family-friendly as those previous two we mentioned. The end scene, very infamous. It's a bunch of food items having an orgy.
Yeah.
That's how I describe it. And probably the main takeaway of the movie. Not one I've revisited much, but a fun theater going.
Sort of like in the or this is the end.
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
it's
good,
just like,
good first watch.
yeah.
No real need to revisit. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, pretty good. This was kind of as Star Wars movies were getting crammed down our throat, but we were still kind of excited to have good Star Wars movies. What do you sort of remember enjoying about it?
It's inventive. It's pretty interesting to just be like, this is how the plans for the Death Star got to the characters, which is, I think, something that they've tried to do too much with some of the later Star Wars entries. They've been like, here, let's just fill this little plot hole. This one, I think, is an interesting thing to like use as a peg. And then the other thing that I remember most from it is there's Donnie Yen in it, who's this very, very famous martial arts actor, not typically in American films. And, you know, George Lucas heavily bases the Force on sort of his Catholic upbringing. There's this moment, Donnie Yen, he's blind and he's a Jedi and he doesn't have a lightsaber. He has a staff of some sort. And there's one moment where he needs to walk through just a all-out firefight. Pew, 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 pew.
Right.
And he just like enters this, like it's every religion in one. It's like this Buddhist and Catholic thing where he's just like, I'm going to get the quote right. I'm one with the Force and the Force is with me. And it just hit something like really deep in the little Catholic school boy who watched Star Wars in me, where I was just like, this is great. This is exactly the sort of adult emotional thing that I want from Star Wars that I feel, unfortunately, they haven't delivered as much as I would like. But that scene, I'm literally like, this is awesome. The Force protects you from pew, 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 pew. And he, too, it's just like he gets this huge moment in an internationally watched film. It's just like a cool thing all around.
Yeah, that's cool. Last popular film, Deadpool. This brings up the Ryan Reynolds debate. Now,
hotly contested.
Ryan Reynolds is very popular, especially with women. He's very handsome. He's very charming. I'm told he's very funny, and I do think he's very charming. I just don't kind of get the Deadpool shtick. I mean, I get it. Like, I think if I was 13 and saw it, I would have really loved it. But I don't know. I think maybe I was just too old when I first saw it. But Ryan Reynolds in general, like, I'm not the biggest fan of his persona and his shtick. I know he's very, very popular, and I do recognize the charm, but I don't know. Am I being a cynic, or what do you think?
I don't know that he's ever been in like a great movie or ever really turned himself over to a like top director to really guide him through an incredible performance. He feels like a guy who sort of has all the tools that you would want in a big actor, and has focused his career on rom-coms and action hero movies, and I think you just are left 10% unsatisfied by, it's just like, I think there's more in there.
Yeah, I look back at his earlier work like Adventureland and The Proposal, Waiting. He's very good in Waiting. I would say is probably my favorite use of him, but yeah, just some of the more recent efforts, I don't quite get it.
But he's rich as heck and married to Blake Lively, and has really just made a heck of a career. So hats off to him.
He's doing a little better than me, you might say. Maybe I'm jealous.
Maybe we're jealous.
Maybe I'm jealous. All right, Flynn Brothers favorites from 2016, The Salesman. This is a Iranian film, which is sort of a different perspective on Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. The main character is directing a adaptation of it, and a very chilling very chilling film. What do you kind of remember about it? Because we both really enjoyed it.
The one thing that I remember particularly is I was in high school really good friends with a Persian kid, and I would go over to Persian parties a lot and kind of got a feel for what the Iranian culture was like, and then seeing it in this movie was fascinating because you just don't see this side of Iran very often.
Right.
You would never even, like, if you listen to the American media, you would think there's never plays ever in Iran.
Right, yeah.
And it just showed this very like grounded, interesting, humane portrayal. It's fascinating because there's these sort of culture edicts. This is a story, The Death of a Salesman, about a man who visits a prostitute and sex worker. And in the play adaptation, the character playing the sex worker has to wear like a raincoat because they can't be scantily clad.
Right.
And then the other thing that's interesting is you just realize that the guy who ends up, really hurting bad, the play director's wife, is this salesman, this Willie Loman character who came there because that was the apartment of the woman he used to see and, pay for favors. And it's just like, wow. Like once you realize that, it's like, this is just such a really interesting layered movie. And then again, the one scene that really, really sets it off is the woman gets attacked in the shower. And the reason she gets attacked in the shower is because she leaves the door open because her husband tells her that he's coming home and can you please leave the door unlocked for me?
Right.
She leaves the door unlocked, and there is this stunning shot of the door slowly opening, and it's silent except for the sound of the shower, and it's just like the sense of suspense that is cultivated by the sight of a door slowly opening. It's just like, that's directing at its finest.
Yeah, wonderful adult movie. Deepwater Horizon, another one of our favorites. Good Mark Wahlberg performance in this. You really like John Malkovich as well.
He plays a sleazy Louisiana BP oil executive. You got safety measures are outdated. They're unnecessary. You're being ridiculous, Mark Wahlberg. And, of course, the second half of the movie is everything blowing up. I saw this film in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, while I was on a train trip across the country. I saw it at 10 p.m. because there was nothing else to do in Salt Lake City, Utah. And that was when I saw it.
When in Utah.
There you go.
The Witch, another fabulous picture, Robert Eggers. I would say outside of The Queen's Gambit, my favorite work of Anya Taylor-Joy. She's really great in this. There's a very disturbing scene at the very end. There's a very disturbing scene at the very beginning. There's a incarnation of the devil in the form of a goat known as Black Phillip, and just a really fun, very, very intimate, insular film. It all takes place basically on this New England farm in the 1600s, something like that.
Yeah, they're like
One
outcasts from this village, and they're just living on their own. And you are just like, Anya, you're so beautiful. How can you just be out in the wilderness like this? It's such a tragedy. And then also, though, it's just like you see a movie like this where it's just 5 characters and they live in a small house, and it's just all about the story and the atmosphere. And you're just like, man, people make filmmaking seem so hard sometimes. This one just seems effortless.
Yeah. Another one we love, The Nice Guys, total guy movie, two-hander, fat Russell Crowe and hunky Ryan Gosling. It's really wonderful. Shane Black of Lethal Weapon fame wrote and directed it. I remember seeing it and just thinking it was an instant classic.
Totally. Gosling is as funny as I've seen pretty much anybody be in a movie. Like the yelps that he makes, like he's really just unreal. And when he gets his arm broken, when he punches through the glass and like opens up the vein on his arm, and he's just like bleeding out way too much.
He's great with physical comedy in this, and it really kind of was a precursor to his great work in Barbie. And just it was the first time I saw him where it's like, man, he's really gifted as a comedic actor.
Yeah,
really wonderful.
And Crowe, man, I love fat Russell Crowe.
Oh yeah,
we've started with Gladiator, who was an absolute stud, and here we are, and he's
chomping cigars and swilling booze, and he's awesome, man. Final Flynn brother favorite. I will admit I have not seen this, so you're gonna have to take the reins. Martin Scorsese's Silence. You really enjoyed this one.
Look, I'm diving into the Catholic thing again. This is really only if you're a big fan of. You're a thinking man's Catholic in that you're just like, you're aware of the issues of, missionaries and the sort of cultural complications that all that brings up. And you also love Scorsese. Man, it's just a fascinating movie. Somewhat similar to Shogun. It's this film where these Westerners sort of land on Japan, and you come across this society that is so different and yet so advanced, but just in so many different ways. The priorities are so different from what they have. You get a pretty brilliant yet limited Liam Neeson performance where he's not, I will find you and I will kill you. He's like this disillusioned Catholic priest. Andrew Garfield and Adam Driver are both kind of in full command and super, super interesting. And man, it's just a really meditative look at faith, because basically what these missionaries are doing, not to go too long, is they're trying to bring this religion to this new culture because they believe if these people don't hear about this, you're gonna go to hell for eternity. And they really do believe that. They're not like, whether or not they're being sent there for malicious aims by whatever country is sending them is not on their mind. They literally are there to convert, and they just realize that it just doesn't translate. There's so many cultural differences. There's a line Liam Neeson says at the end where he's like, they think the Son of God is the sun, like the sun that rises. And it's just like, they're not understanding what we're trying to say to them. And they're like literally going to die in Japan as a result of it. So just fascinating.
Yeah, very fascinating. All right, 2016, very good year in film. What do you think? Is this worthy of our final bracket?
Boy, I'd maybe think about it with what was the other one?
I think 2010 was the other one, and then this one. Okay, we can maybe pull one or two from the 2010s, but we'll have to consider it.
I mean, Moonlight, and then a lot of Flynn brother favorites. So it's
kind of curious. Yeah, we'll put a pin in it for now. 2017, a lot of acclaimed films from this year. Best Picture was The Shape of Water. Again, kind of like the Mad Max Fury Road thing. You watch it and you're just sort of like, how did he do it? How did Guillermo del Toro get me to buy into a love story between a mute woman and a fish man? It's a classic him, magical realism, nightmare fairy tale. Michael Shannon gives an unbelievable performance as a guy who has I think a gangrenous
finger,
and
or two, maybe.
He's the total villain in the movie, and really, really wonderful film.
A total triumph for little weirdos everywhere. Like it is, when it won the Oscar, it was just like, I'm so glad they gave it to a movie as weird as this.
Yes, no, it's totally, but it does have that old Hollywood magic to it.
It's such a fusion of those two things.
Yeah. Call Me by Your Name, another highly acclaimed film from the year. Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk, probably one of his most palatable films, even though there's the fudging with the timelines and stuff. It's a very simple film. The chief achievement, I think, of it is the sound editing is so incredible. It's a war film, and war films are really made on great sound editing in general. But yeah, I remember particularly Tom Hardy and the propeller plane and the gunner he has attached to it. Just that sound is being so incredibly impactful in a movie theater.
So good. The bombs dropping on the boys on the beach. You just like the timing of that is crazy. And then the other lasting image I remember is when Tom Hardy runs out of fuel and he's just gliding the propellers aren't even spinning. It's quiet. It's just like Nolan, man. He can really make a picture.
Get Out, stone cold masterpiece, man. From the writing to the directing to the acting, it's just a perfect film, start to finish.
Absolutely true.
Not much to say. Lady Bird, very good movie. Greta Gerwig's debut as a director. We lived the film. We grew up where Lady Bird grew up. Went to the brother high school of her sister high school. As Sacramento guys, I'd say we have a little bit of a beef with the ending of the film. The film is about sort of at the end, she leaves Sacramento and goes to New York and is, kind of forgetting about her old town. And then there's this sort of voiceover montage at the end where she's like, when I go back to Sacramento, I get emotional driving around. And it just feels very detached and kind of surface level. And I remember as guys who were living in Sac at the time, it to us rang very false. I'm curious if we saw it now, having not lived there for a few years. But yeah, I do remember having some qualms with the ending, even though the film overall we enjoyed.
Clearly, Greta Gerwig is somebody who was born in Sacramento, but destined to be like a queen of New York. I mean, she's sitting courtside with Baumbach. Yeah. And I do think our critique of it is fairly narrowly Sacramentan. But I think it's tough I think the reason why it registered so deeply with a lot of people is there are a lot of specifics to it. It's almost a movie like Boyhood, where it's almost like Girlhood, where it has like these really poignant references that I think hit people pretty hard. Beanie Feldstein is so good in it. But, Greta, it was termed often as a love letter to Sacramento, and my thought at the time, and perhaps it would change now, but if that was a love letter somebody wrote me, I might want to break up with them. And she clearly wanted to break up with Sacramento, so there you go.
There you go. She's not watching many Kings games, let me put it that way. All right, Phantom Thread, another acclaimed film from the year. Paul Thomas Anderson's bizarro romantic comedy about a woman who wants to get Daniel Day-Lewis sick so he'll love her more. Really good movie, though, man. You love it. You in particular. I really enjoy it, but you really love it.
The omelet scene is unreal. I think once you get into the comedy of it, like this is a guy, these lines are designed to be like the most insane things that anyone would ever say. They live in this crazy insular, totally insulated world, and yet they're perfect for each other. They really do complete one another, and it is kind of a great film about like how wonderful it is to have somebody who completes you in this very strange, messed up way. Yeah.
Last acclaimed film, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. We talked about him earlier, Martin McDonough. Criticized a bit, seen as a bit of a reductive sort of outsider's look at racial politics in America. But, I think Frances McDormand and Sam Rockwell do really strong work. I think it's pretty well written overall. You can gripe with the point of view and, like I said, finding it a little reductive. But I think I saw it twice and I liked it both times.
Yeah, I mean, it was at the peak of the sort of police brutality awareness, and the hero, I guess you would say, of the movie is a racist, abusive cop. Right. But at the same time, he does learn his lesson and sacrifices himself to aid in the capture of a killer, of somebody who did a really bad deed. And I do think that America has a problem with forgiveness, particularly for people who do things that we consider to be unthinkable acts of badness like he did in that movie. And so I think it's just hard for us to maybe wrangle with it a bit.
Yeah, complicated film to say the least. Popular ones of 2017, we have Wonder Woman, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. There was Spider-Man Homecoming, which I really enjoyed. Had a killer twist where Peter Parker is interested romantically in this girl. He's going to homecoming, and her dad turns out to be Michael Keaton, the villain. And it's a twist because the girl he likes, presents as black, but she's, it turns out, mixed race and has a white dad, which I thought was just such a great bit of casting and sort of, preying on audiences' expectations about what her father would look like. I think the movie really pulled a rabbit out of the hat on that one.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of mixed-race couples to appeal to the broadest demographic possible, particularly in like commercials and movies. Right. This one, I think, uses it the best to sort of serve the story. The woman who presented as black, this little-known actress known as Zendaya, I believe, right?
No, it's another
not?
actress.
It's not
I'm spacing on her name, but no, it's not
okay.
Zendaya.
I was trying to look at me making
nice
an
try,
awful
buddy.
joke, trying to catch my brother's slip, and I didn't.
Again, you proved to not listen or pay attention very well. Another popular film, It was a fun film. Pennywise, good performance by Bill Skarsgård. Coco, boy, we talked about crying at the end of Toy Story 3. Whoo, you cry at the end of Coco when that little boy cures his grandma's Alzheimer's with a song. It's pretty incredible, man. I remember we watched it at home with our folks, and all four of us were just dead silent in tears, not really looking at one another, just so wrapped up in the movie. It's a beautiful, beautiful film.
Devastated. The grandma is the sweetest, wrinkliest, the little old lady you could possibly imagine. Yes. And I really do think I have a bottomless appetite for Dia de los Muertos animated films. I will sign me up for anybody who wants to make that sort of
there's
thing.
only one of them. So
there's one other. Oh gosh, I'm blanking.
Encanto? Do you think that's it?
Or it's a Guillermo del Toro. Why don't you
look
on
it up?
I'll hit you.
The next popular film I have, Logan, the wonderful superhero movie. It kind of does for the Western genre what The Dark Knight did for the gangster genre. It sort of recontextualizes this aging Wolverine into a spaghetti Western, and it's just a really good film. James Mangold directs, and God, he's got to put together a real good filmography, hasn't he? But did you finish your research? Did you figure out the?
Yeah, I got it. It actually didn't make our list. 2014's The Book of Life.
I never saw it. You like that one?
I did. The only reason that I have seen it is because I played it one time when I was assigned to substitute teach a Spanish class.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
And my Spanish is a bit rusty, so I was like, what do we got here that's in Spanish? And
Libro de vida.
Yeah.
Nice. I could have taught the class. Listen to me. All right. But yeah, no, Logan, really wonderful superhero film.
Fantastic.
Star Wars The Last Jedi, which we controversially enjoyed. A lot of folks did not enjoy this film. Star Wars heads did not enjoy this film, but we did, and our producer Will's flashing some thumbs up, so he did as well. I really loved Adam Driver screaming his lines. I loved worn out, sad Luke Skywalker. I liked Yoda coming back. Yes, Will is accurately letting me know Driver got jacked for the movie. He loves jack dudes. What can I say? We all love jack dudes on this podcast. And I think of the sequel trilogy, probably my favorite. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the light speed climactic thing that uses that to explode everything, and the theater that we was in actually remained silent during that moment, which was really cool to let it land in the way that it was supposed to. Purple hair, Laura Dern in it. Gotta love that. Probably the best movie that was made when the creator of it was certain that Hillary Clinton would become president.
Yep. Alrighty. Girls Trip, another wonderful popular movie. Hilarious, man. Past the classic comedy era, but a really, really good comedy. One you can watch over and over again. Tiffany Haddish delivers the definition of a breakout performance. She's just insanely funny in it. The whole cast, Queen Latifah, Jada Pinkett, I think it's Regina Hall, I want to say. Right. I always mix up her and King, but I think it's Regina Hall. But yeah, just perfectly cast, the four of them, and the characters are very well written. They go to New Orleans for Essence Fest, and man, it's just so funny, so funny.
They're cutting loose. Jada Pinkett Smith, it's insane to see her in this movie doing all of the other stuff that sort of came afterwards, and all of her sort of the red table talk and everything, when she is just like a really game person to be like the butt of the joke in the movie.
Yeah. No, she's wonderful in it. All right, Flynn Brothers favorites for 2017. Very underseen film, Donald Cried, from writer-director Christopher Avedisian. I hope I'm saying that right. It's about a guy who returns to his hometown and meets a really weird guy named Donald.
His childhood best friend.
Buddy. Yeah, not meets, but reunites with, I should say. Impossible to describe. I think Danny McBride, Jody Hill, those sort of guys produced the film and helped open it up to distribution. I just would recommend it. If you're into weird cringe comedies, this one is awesome and super. I hate the word pathos, but it has a lot of pathos in it. And it's just really, really weird, bizarre, but wonderful.
It really captures what it was like to be friends with a guy when you're like a weird middle schooler / teenager.
And imagine that guy never grew up, but you did.
Yeah.
Reunite. Yeah. Another Flynn brother favorite, Baby Driver. One of my favorite Edgar Wright movies. The soundtrack, in collaboration with the images on screen, is pretty delightful. You really enjoyed Mother from this year. I myself did not love Darren Aronofsky's Mother, but you really loved Mother. What's your take on Mother?
Well, he's trying to craft a creation myth, and you can tell that he's really impressed with the way that he's come up with this creation myth idea. Once you sort of understand what he's going for, I'm enjoying it. Once again, we're kitting back into the Catholicism of me. I think it really hits if you grew up Catholic and you have this sort of biblical understanding. He's really playing with a lot of biblical images. But it is kind of, there's this term when you play rap that is really aggressive and has a lot of like uncomfortable imagery and has this very harsh tone. It is known as scaring the hose.
Right. It's not a song you would play in the club that would get women excited. It's music for weird dudes.
You have 4 chicks over, 4 dudes, and you give your weirdest buddy the aux cord, and he puts this on, and you're like, dude, what are you doing? Mother is the film version of this. I think it's an ultimate scaring the hose, and not to call her a hoe, because she is not, but Aronofsky wouldn't shut up about it so much that Jennifer Lawrence, I think, like divorced him. I
don't think they were married, but they broke up. Broke up.
They broke up over
and
it.
if you're calling anyone a hoe, it's me, because this movie scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, it scared Jimmy.
Well, yeah.
No, Jennifer Lawrence is really good in it. Like, she just kind of gets tortured in it. You've got Javier Bardem playing God, which he is a weird God for sure. I think I could see how you would be obsessed with this movie if you made it, and I could also see how if you were Jennifer Lawrence, you wouldn't want to hear another word about it ever again.
This is a hell of a year, man, especially at the top. I really think, we talked about 2010. I forget the other year we talked about. Maybe it was 2016, but 2017, I think we got to nominate this one. I mean, just looking at the top, the Acclaimed films. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right. Nominated. It'll be in the final bracket. Stay tuned. Okay. 2018, the Acclaimed films from 2018. We have Green Book, which won Best Picture. I will be honest, I've never seen Green Book. I know it was a bit reviled in that it won Best Picture. I will say, for some reason, the algorithm on my social media thinks I have seen it and love this movie, and it just sends me numerous clips from it, and it looks kind of good. Like, I keep watching clips from it. It's like pretty funny. Like Viggo Mortensen's doing like a Jersey Italian gangster guy, and Mahershala's great. And I don't know, man. I think I'm going to watch it at some point.
It's probably like a 90s movie is my idea for it. Like, it's something that would have been more of what you would have seen then. I think it got accused of being a white savior movie, which is
high crime in this climate.
Exactly.
Yeah. Black Klansman was a great film from 2018. I will say it was great, but a couple years later, Da 5 Bloods, another Spike Lee film, came out, and I felt just kind of topped it immediately. It was just so soon after Black Klansman. It is a very good movie. John David Washington's great in it, but we'll get to Da 5 Bloods in our part 4. But very good movie, but I just think got overshadowed a bit. The Favorite with Emma Stone was a very acclaimed film. Not my favorite, but a lot of folks seem to enjoy it. Roma, which got a ton of awards consideration. It's basically a movie about a wealthy kid who loves his nanny. I forget the director, if it's Cuarón or I forget who exactly the director.
Google.
Yeah, give it a Google just to fact check me. But it's based on the director's own life.
It's Cuarón.
And it is Cuarón, and it's based on his life. And the black and white's a little pretentious. There's just kind of some elements that are a little award season baity, and I don't know, man. It just kind of wasn't for me. A little boring, a little slight. It just wasn't for me.
Very personal film. The main thing I remember from it is he keeps panning upwards to airplanes flying above, which apparently is just a feature of Mexico City. It's got a very well-trafficked airport, and it really kind of drove home to me. It's like, it's kind of crazy that we don't really pay attention to the airplanes that are constantly flying over us.
Well, if you live in San Diego, there's one smack in the middle of your city. A Star is Born, which we did not see when it came out in 2018, but we saw recently and really loved. One of Bradley Cooper's best performances. We love especially his brother, who is played by
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott, that's right. And there's a scene where they've been very contentious the whole film, and Sam Elliott's dropping him off, Bradley Cooper, and they've never really had a heart-to-heart before. They're so toxically masculine, not unlike us. And Bradley Cooper's getting out of the car, and the whole movie, Sam Elliott's been lamenting that Brad Cooper and their dad would get drunk together, and the Bradley Cooper would kind of throw his life away with this deadbeat dad. And there's a scene where he's getting out of the truck, and Brad Cooper looks back at Sam Elliott and he says, wasn't Dad I idolized, it was you. And he just slams the door, and Sam Elliott, he can't bear to be vulnerable. He just starts backing the truck out of the driveway as fast as he can to get away from his emotions. You just see him just tearing up, and it's such a brilliant study in masculine relationships. And just a really, really wonderful moment in that film.
Who says repression isn't good sometimes?
Yeah, it's good cinema. But you think Brad Cooper plays the rock star in this. Is a rock star one of the most fun characters to play?
I'd have to imagine so. He looks like he's having a great time, crushing pills and throwing them back. You get to do a lot of the most fun things as an actor. You're doing all the drugs. You're swilling booze.
Yeah.
You're playing guitar solos on stage. You actually get to be you get to be a musician. One of the hardest things to be at a professional level, and you just get to dabble in it without as much of the struggle, and then you get to get on out.
He was convincing, though. I think he learned to play guitar and sang well. He was very good in it.
Absolutely.
Vice, with Christian Bale becoming Dick Cheney. I would say this is an example, we talked a little earlier, Adam McKay's style going a bit too far.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's just a little bit too much. But at the same time, I really do feel like I had a good idea as to who Dick Cheney was, which was not something I would say before I saw that movie.
Another acclaimed film, If Beale Street Could Talk. There was also the documentary Free Solo about the guy who liked to climb, I think it was Half Dome Free Solo.
It's not Half Dome, it's El Capitan.
Pardon me.
Finally got him. And Alex Honnold is his name. It is one of the all-time movies that makes you have your palms sweaty.
Yeah.
You are just like, They show him making it to the top at the beginning of the movie, and even still, you're just like, no way, dude. No way. You're going to make it. No way. He's climbing it with no rope, faster than anyone else has ever done it. And the other hilarious part of it is they're interviewing his girlfriend during it. And it's like, what's it like being with this guy who literally any second could plummet to his death? And it's just like, well, he isn't happy unless he's about to die. So I guess this is what it is. And it's...
Can't feel alive unless you can die.
Yeah, that's right. And it's pretty fascinating study of the extremes that humanity is capable of.
Popular films of 2018, we had Black Panther. We had Bohemian Rhapsody, which I think another film that satisfies your point about actors and fake teeth, and sometimes the fake teeth wear the actors. I think those chomps were really wearing Rami Malek in that picture.
Yeah. And to go back to Black Panther really quickly, just what a performance by Chadwick Boseman, considering what we knew about him afterwards. And also Michael B. Jordan, I think, is pretty good in it. The look is right. Some of the line deliveries are a little hit and miss for me, but I think he, serves his role well. But this is really the final role where we get to see who's Gollum.
Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis really gets to play a bad guy in it, in his own face, and I love to see Andy Serkis getting the big time shine.
Fun animated film, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. A lot of Star Wars and Spider-Man hysteria going on at this time. There was Avengers Infinity War. That was part one of the big, the part 3 finale of the Avengers films. I really enjoyed this one. Brolin's good as Thanos, and pretty enjoyable. Mission Impossible Fallout. There's an awesome action sequence in this where Henry Cavill is kicking ass in a bathroom, and he's about to fight a guy, and he does this thing where he kind of throws out both of his fists, and it's basically him cocking his biceps, and it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in an action movie, and just only something you'd think of if you were super jacked.
Yeah, I love seeing Henry Cavill in that role. I think it's awesome when he's just a huge dude who's trying to use his fists.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar move I make when I'm about to put down a meatball sub. Another popular film, A Quiet Place. I enjoyed it, kind of, for me, a little gimmicky, but an enjoyable film. Obviously, has spawned a franchise. I haven't kept up with the sequels, but the first one was enjoyable enough.
Yeah, good for John Krasinski.
Absolutely. Crazy Rich Asians. We're another group of white fellas who loved Crazy Rich Asians. Really just a funny movie. I know people like, it's like, oh, all like white people like Crazy Rich Asians. It's like, well, it's like, people like movies that are funny and have characters you can root for and interesting conflicts, and this is just a total example of that. I think it really stands the test of time as well.
A world that I did not really know very much about at all. Maybe it isn't accurate or whatever. Maybe it's highly dramatized, but the way that they do it in that movie is just... it's pretty funny.
Another popular film, Venom, with Tom Hardy, who gives a very much like a Jim Carrey and The Mask sort of performance with the duality between himself, Eddie Brock, and his crazy alter ego, Venom. And one odd thing is Tom Hardy, whenever he plays an American character, tends to do kind of a Brooklyn accent. I'm Tom Hardy. And the film takes place in San Francisco, so I just find it odd that he's kind of doing the Tom Hardy Brooklyn accent thing. And it's like, I'm in the 8 Ashbury. I'm going to Dolores Park. Like, it's just this, like, you're on the wrong coast. Like, it's like
he's
a little
British.
silly.
He can't be expected to know the difference between the East and West Coast. He's the one, you can just sort of feel him taking control of the film. Like, he's the one who like, there's this more conventional Marvel movie that you can feel it was maybe imagined to be originally. Tom Hardy's like, I'm just gonna be super weird. I'm gonna eat a lobster in a tank in the middle of a restaurant.
Some Flynn Brothers favorites. Annihilation. This was I think from Alex Garland, who made Ex Machina. This has one of the best sayings of a title in a movie. Jennifer Jason Leigh is being possessed. I forget if it's like an alien force or something, but she basically is like in the movie, and she's like, annihilation. And then she just starts getting possessed by the life form. Natalie Portman's really good in it. I think it's a little bit about infidelity and cheating is kind of the main
It's like how it turns you into a different person, even though you sort of look the same. Yeah. I think that's kind of part of it. And just a really beautifully rendered, seemingly realistic alien movie, sort of like Arrival. I feel like these two kind of live similarly in my brain.
Another Flynn brother favorite, Hereditary, my favorite Ari Aster movie. I would say it's the one with the least flaws. I would say Midsummer, Beau is Afraid. They just, even though they maybe hit higher highs than Hereditary, they just have some pretty big flaws and are a little overlong. And I just think at this point in his career, Hereditary is his best work. A film you really love that I do as well, The Old Man and the Gun. This is sort of the last great Robert Redford movie star performance. I think he's in like his late 70s, early 80s when he does it. And just a really solid kind of crime comedy.
Yeah, he's sticking up banks. It's awesome. Yeah. Like, who doesn't love a movie about a bank robber? Redford, just one of the all-time charisma guys. They have his love interest in the movie is 30 years younger than him at least. And
no, isn't it Sissy Spacek?
Okay, maybe
she's
it's
kind of close.
Maybe it's 20 years, but like still, it's a significant age gap. But not for a second are you like, I don't believe that. You're like, she's lucky to be pulling that 70-year-old.
80, if not
80. Yeah, and then Casey Affleck has a nice move in it where he kind of does a reference to The Sting. It's just sort of like, it's like Kobe's 60-point game.
Yes,
they just let him take a ton of shots. It's not really like it's just so heavily referential to everything that came before it.
But stands on its own. Still
Absolutely.
a very, very, very good movie.
Yeah.
All right, last Flynn brother favorite, The Kindergarten Teacher. This is a capital C, complicated, very uncomfortable film starring Maggie Gyllenhaal as a kindergarten teacher who becomes obsessed with a prodigious student of hers who is very adept at writing poetry and goes to some pretty unhealthy lengths to exert possession over him. And I don't want to get too much into it because it's very twist heavy and really absorbing viewing experience, but highly recommend if you're able to stomach uncomfortable material.
She herself fancies herself to be a poet, and so it's just this like really torturous thing to see her work so hard at something that this little kindergartner is effortless at. And the way he announces that he has a poem that has entered his brain from the muse of creativity. He just says, I have a poem, and then he just starts saying a brilliant poem.
And his name is Jimmy in it, which makes the film even more uncomfortable when Maggie Nolan's like, Jimmy, do you have a poem? And I'm just like, man, this movie's hard enough already. I don't need my name in it, you know?
I would say we usually have a policy of if we're not digging a movie within 20 minutes, or we're just like, I don't know if I like this movie, within 20 minutes we turn it off. That happened to me at the 20-minute mark, the 40-minute mark, and the 60-minute mark, and each time you said, no, let's keep watching
Stick it out.
And I'm glad you did, buddy.
Uncomfortable film, though. If you can stomach it, please watch it. 2018, solid year, but yeah, I'm just looking at these. I don't think we can nominate it.
Yeah.
I think 2017 might be our horse from this decade.
All right, let's enter it into the Derby.
All right, cool. 2017, you will compete with 2019, 03, and 06 in part 4. We are going to take one last break, and then we will wrap up with some final thoughts about the movies of the 2010s. All right. Final segment, some final thoughts on the movies of the 2010s. We talked a little bit about the McConaissance, Matthew McConaughey going from romantic comedy lead to dramatic actor. I would say my favorite performance is Killer Joe of the McConaissance. Do you have a favorite performance? Would you say it's not even a film, it's rather True Detective? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, True Detective is probably where he's the best because he really gets to stretch out. I honestly think one of the best things he does in the McConaissance is just stealing the scene in Wolf of Wall Street. I think he's really perfect in that and really sets the tone for that film.
Fair enough. I think, it's interesting thinking about it in modern day because I feel like an example of an actor undergoing a McConaissance is Robert Pattinson, someone who is known for the Twilight films and then now has done some pretty interesting choices, not only in small independent films, but big blockbusters like, the Batman and Mickey 17 and stuff like that. But I'm curious. I tasked you with a little homework about who you thought might be due for a McConaissance in our current day and age, and it seems like you've come up with a few names. Is that right?
I've got quite a few. I'm going to start with a lady.
Okay.
I think that her career has veered off track a little bit, and she's been seduced by the massive paychecks doled out by the Apple Corporation. I'm talking, of course, of Anya Taylor-Joy, who started being very winsome and charming in A Queen's Gambit, very deep in character in The Witch, but has now been sort of this like spy / hard-edged character in The Menu. She plays a sex worker. So my pitch for her is to go indie, exclusively high-level directors. I think she needs to just get away from just really turn yourself over to these award winners, start going for Oscars, things like that. And then I think she also needs a Charlize Theron-esque monster role at some point where you subvert your former model nature.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. I like that one.
You buying that?
I think she is. Yeah, I would say she's maybe a little young to have a McConaissance. Her career needs to develop a little more, but I like that. I like the indie director route for sure.
We'll file that away. Chris Hemsworth is a actor. I'm thinking apparently he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, very early Alzheimer's. That is not that he has dementia yet, but it's just you are
a lot of risk factors.
Exactly. And so he's dialed back his career a lot.
Wow.
You haven't seen him very much. So I think this opens a door. Chris Hemsworth, character actor time. Let's get him to start really stealing some scenes.
2 weeks on set, 5 scenes. Yeah, I like that. Supporting character, puts on weight for some roles. Totally. Yeah, he was really good in the Mad Max movie he was in with Anya, coincidentally. Yeah, he's very good in that.
Absolutely. We've seen him sort of stretch his, freaky legs a little bit, do it a little more. All right, here's the next one. This one I think is probably the closest to the McConaissance. Zac Efron.
Oh, yes. Go from hunky to dramatic actor. I will say, man, Zac Efron, I think he was in a motorcycle accident or something, but he's had some cosmetic surgery or something. His face, like, and jawline is a little like it worked pretty well when he was in the Iron Claw and kind of playing like, you know, a big wrestler and stuff. But I wonder if he can still be believable as sort of a dramatic actor.
See,
I wonder.
You've hit on what I think. Let's stop pretending your face doesn't look the way your face does. Let's start using that. You have one of the, no offense to him, it was a tragic accident that happened. He's doing the best with what he can, but it needed to, a car accident, a really unfortunate turn of fate. Let's use that. Your full heel turn. You're a villain now. You're playing bad guys.
There you go.
Zac Efron, subvert yourself.
I like it. The Efronaissance.
Yeah,
Great.
the Efronaissance. That one. Ooh, I like that.
good
Okay, here's
music.
another one. This one also, too. Marsden, James Marsden, known for your
interesting.
boyish good looks, a lot of rom-coms coming up.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic
yeah.
the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
It's time to wipe the slate clean.
Okay.
My big advice to James Marsden: age naturally. Resist the urge to Botox or plastic surgery.
No more
yourself.
dye in the hair. No more just for men.
Let it go.
Wow,
Let it
wow.
go. There's so few actors now who actually just age,
Yeah, it's true.
and you have this like boyish look to you.
Yeah,
Let's start
yeah.
letting that go. Let's try to get, I think this is probably the one where people are like, does he have the chops? Could he do the acting? Prove them all wrong, Marsden. You can do it. And here's my one. I think tried the this is the guy I think currently going for the McConaissance.
Okay.
That has not maybe quite pulled it off. It's our man, Chris Pine. Who tried to do it with the Pool Boy, I think, which was
Okay,
unfortunately
yes,
fairly
yes.
poorly reviewed and not exactly very financially successful.
I like him though as an entity, but it's like I haven't seen him in a ton of great work. But yes, it would be cool to see him do some good work. Yes.
I think, dude, he's got a lot going for him, like natural talent, natural gifts. So that's
nice list. I
that's
like
my
that.
guy.
That's a good list of the Pine-a-sons.
The
is what he could
Pine-a-sons.
have. Yeah, a lot of these are pretty
the
easily.
Pine-a-sons.
Yeah, a lot of these are applicable, aren't they? Okay, cool. Another thing I just wanted to talk about this 2010s decade is it was really the rise of streaming. And it's interesting that you started this decade essentially in old media and you end it fully in streaming. You know, I think back to in the early 2010s, I was at a video store, which still existed, and I was looking for DVD seasons of 30 Rock. And I was looking and someone was like, they have those on Netflix. You can watch on Netflix. And I was like, I didn't really know anyone who had Netflix. And I was like, I don't want to pay for Netflix. And then I remember watching Netflix at someone's house and it was always slow and buffering and stuff, which really isn't an issue with Netflix. Here we are at the end of the decade. And yeah, I have not bought seasons of television on DVD in a very, very long time. So yeah, it is just funny how fast things changed. And, I think part of that change affected the movies. I think in the early 2000s, when we look at part 2 of this podcast series, is these were very like old Hollywood style films. And then this decade, films are getting a little weirder just because so many movie ideas have been done.
Yeah.
And, there's also that reliance on IP as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword that, a lot of stuff's been done. Let's either remake stuff or borrow from IP and kind of twist it in a new direction. But it was very interesting. This podcast, obviously a lot longer than our previous part. And I think part of it was, yes, we were becoming a little more film literate as we were getting older watching these movies. But these movies, there's just a little more meat on the bone. They're a little more complicated. They're a little more specific and weird. And I think part of that, streaming may have been almost like this second independent boom where you had the first kind of independent film boom in the 90s and early 2000s with home video and whatnot and just easier methods for making films. But with streaming, it was similar. There's this democratization and new voices coming out. And yeah, very interesting. I think for how much people are always complaining, movies ain't what they used to be. I look back at this decade and think, pretty cool decade, and then streaming, for all the cons, there were a lot of pros as well.
Well said. I also think what's interesting is that streaming has now become so entrenched that a lot of these streamers are now guilty of the things that they were trying to disrupt and subvert. They would take a lot of chances. They would give money to sort of up-and-coming directors with interesting ideas, and it's like, whoa, Netflix is making that, huh?
Yeah.
What, this is coming out? Amazon, huh? And now they're such like big players that you can feel them maybe kind of tightening up and getting a little more algorithmic in their financial decisions.
Yeah, I agreed. Last little segment I want to do here is about directors that had a great 2010s decade. These are all kind of directors who had at least 3 good to great movies. The first one I want to do is Paul Thomas Anderson. During the 2010s, he had The Master, Inherent Vice, which we did not mention. It's based on a Thomas Pynchon book. We've read the book, really enjoyed the book. We've seen the film probably 4 or 5 times, and it's pretty confusing for having seen it 4 or 5 times. I still don't totally get it. It's very atmospheric. It's very slow. It's, kind of seen as kind of this Big Lebowski-esque kind of stoner noir
private detective
movie. And yeah, it's one of my least favorite of Paul Thomas Anderson. Still a very well-made film and very valid as a piece of art, but not quite for me, and I don't think it landed too well with general audiences.
Conceptually seems like a slam dunk.
Yes.
It is actually one of the movies, though, that I watched and then I read the book, and I would say that having watched the film helped me understand and follow the book, because the casting is fantastic.
You can put faces to names, and there's a lot of names. And his other film in the 2010s, Phantom Thread, which we already talked about. Quentin Tarantino, another great decade. He had Django Unchained, The Hateful Eight, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which we talked about in part 1. Christopher Nolan also had a great decade. Inception, Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, and Dunkirk. That's quite a poker hand, ain't it?
Absolutely.
Martin Scorsese had Shutter Island, Hugo, The Wolf of Wall Street, Silence, and The Irishman. Very broad swath.
All over the place.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Stretching out, getting loose.
Genre-wise, I think, was the most exploratory. And then David Fincher, very good decade with The Social Network. We did not talk about this film, but The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which was a remake film with Rooney Mara, one of her best performances. Very, very good film. Very, very dark. Very, very dark and difficult to watch, but a very, very good film. And then Gone Girl. So, yeah. 5 directors. They all had a really great decade. Some other people too, like Jordan Peele had Get Out and Us. There were a couple of people who had kind of 2 really good movies and stuff, but I wanted to kind of do it 3 or more good to greats. And pretty awesome that all these guys had such good. A lot of these guys kind of later in their careers too, not quite new in their careers.
Yeah, it's interesting when you kind of are past. I would say all of these guys. Maybe Fincher, The Social Network, is his best movie, but all of the other ones I would not say are their best movies.
Yeah. Although Paul Thomas Anderson, he considers The Master his best film. I've read.
That is a hard one to dispute with him. Although I'd say Boogie Nights is probably the more conventional pick.
There Will Be Blood,
or There Will Be Blood. Yeah, but The Master is quite brilliant. I would have to give the nod to Nolan here.
You think Nolan best decade? I think I agree with you. Yeah, I think Dark Knight Rises is imperfect, as is Interstellar, but Inception and Dunkirk are pretty irrefutable, and even those other films that are imperfect are still very, very good. So I think it's curious, man. When all's said and done, Christopher Nolan, he might be king of the hill, huh? Very cool. All right.
Until we've been podding for
we're our eyes are bloodshot. So 2017, to recap, our only finalist that's going to go on to part 4 in battle in the what'd you call it? The Derby.
The Derby.
Sure. Is it going to go to the Derby? All right, 2017, we'll go to the Derby. That's it for us. Please subscribe, comment, and leave a rating. Send questions, comments, or big idea suggestions to our business email, flynnbrospod@gmail.com. Thank you to our very, very patient producer, Will Slade, and we will see you next time on the Flynn Brothers Podcast. Buddy, take care.
Take care, buddy.